What would happen if you have a character in this story that's literally been touched by God in a personal way? What if you actually take the biblical Christian God and set him against this evil? And that's what I did.
In general, the story is the battle between greater good and greater evil. Specifically, it's about a group of people who pass through the small town of Desperation, a mining town in Nevada, who are waylaid by a renegade cop.
There's been a terrible accident at an open pit mining operation in Desperation that set free a horrible ancient evil, as we say in the horror biz. Eventually they discover that they have another purpose, that they've been brought there by God, not just to escape, but to deal with this evil.
And it comes down to a battle between this spirit, an evil spirit known as Tack, and a young 12-year-old boy who has a very pure soul. So it's very spiritual.
David says God is sort of everything. And to my mind, David is the most interesting character. Because he's a kid, he's discovering for the first time this whole idea of God as an omnipotent being. And omnipotent means all-powerful, but the idea that God is everything means that he runs the spectrum of everything that we are. People will say to me, how do you get your ideas? And I don't. A lot of times I don't get an idea. An idea will surface. You know, very slowly I'll see the shape of something. I just go on my nerves and my intuition.
Well, I think the main thing about what King does that pulls in an audience, whether it's readers or viewers, is that he sets his stories in a very real world. They live real lives. They live in our neighborhoods. They're our neighbors. They are us. I've said before that it's not so much about the monster in the closet, but it's about the people who own the house that the monster's closet is in.
I thought of this idea that was kind of surfacing, and I said, why don't I do this thing on a motorcycle? So I got out there on Highway 50, and there's nothing. And then you go by the open pit mines, and it's like somebody buried this ancient God there. They're so huge. And the whole book just sort of came to me there, and I tried never to lose that feeling of emptiness and disconnection. And Mick kept it all.
You know, what King does and what I really like is he likes to scare you from a place that's real. It may turn into something very unreal, but by the time you reach the unreal, you have suspended your disbelief, because he's dismantled that wall of resistance by making things realistic.
I thought, even when I was writing the book, that the husband and the wife are on the highway, and if we set it from his point of view, it's so traditional to have that guy as the hero that we would sell the audience immediately with him as the hero. It would be a total shocker to see him wiped out at the beginning. I've only seen it done once before in the movies, and that's in Psycho.
We have the movie star in one of the leading roles get killed off 15 minutes into a 3-hour movie.
As far as my method of approach, it's always the same. I take a copy of the book, tear out all the pages, and then I'm able to work with the pages on my desk. When you take the book out of the book and you make it loose, you stop seeing it as a book, and you start seeing it, you break it back down again to its component parts. And that's fair enough for me to do, because that's where it was in my head to start with. Originally, Mick and I set out to see Desperation made as a feature film. Mick got in his car and went out to a lot of places in Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada, where they had the kind of look, including the places that I'd seen when I originally got the idea and started to build the basic idea for the book in my head. And he'd send me back tapes and DVD discs, and I'd look and say, no, I don't know about this, and I don't know about that.
In '98, when we were working together, I made some suggestions in terms of making it a little more, even more cinematic, and King writes very cinematic books, but the movie theater was called the Great Western Theater in the book. And I thought, since we wanted to use it as a symbol about the Chinese miners and the Chinese mine, wouldn't it be fun to call it the Chinese Theater and put on the walls murals of the happy Chinese workers and reinforce the lie of what the town of Desperation wanted you to believe life was like back in the 1850s during the mining. Those were some ideas, and you know, talked about maybe rather than having the flashbacks that were in the book, David goes in to view the Nickelodeon-style editing device and sees it as a movie rather than as a flashback.
It was clear to me that Mick respected the screenplay. What he was going to do was, you know, add his creative abilities to the screenplay and not try to turn my screenplay into his movie, that it was going to be a collaboration. We were very involved together in trying to find a place in the United States where we could film it.
The town that we used for the town of Desperation, downtown Desperation, is about a mile outside of Bisbee, Arizona. Bisbee is a mining town that still has all of its 1880s buildings. We could never have found this location more appropriate for this movie than the town of Bisbee. I don't think we could have made it anywhere else in the world. So those were things we talked about before the script was written.
Can I see your registration, please, sir?
No problem.
What really emphasizes loneliness and creepiness is going down and shooting low and wide. Low, wide angles, you see the entire world around them and everything above the world, the sky around them, heaven, if you will. Specifically in the opening of Desperation, what I tried to do was use a lot of low angles and wide lenses and sound and silence and music in very sparing ways, and make the audio-visual qualities as intimidating as the reality of the desert.
Just let me say, I know that Mick had a hard job with Desperation. He had a hard job from a lot of different angles.
Working with kids and their shortened hours, working with visual effects, makeup effects, special effects, physical effects.
There was a fire on the set. That was tough. It was tough to make that work. A lot of the stuff was done at night. That was tough.
Driving scenes, location work, ensemble cast.
He was working with a lot of animals, and that was tough.
The animals, they were great, but they're very time-consuming. You know, it was so much work, and all of these reptiles and insects and things like that was incredibly complicated, but the trainers were really, really good, and it worked out really well. But it's not my favorite part of making movies, and yet it turns out to be some of the most exciting stuff to watch.
Of Desperation, my favorite part of the movie. There are so many. Having written it myself, I could say they're all my favorite parts. But I love the opening sequence. I would say that the first 20 minutes of this movie would rank as probably my favorite, because it's just relentless.
I love that slow build-up, and you have a couple that you're rooting for, that you think they're the heroes, but just this build-up to the explosion of the murder of Henry Thomas's character is so much fun.
And it goes fast. It starts out with a kind of almost like a Twilight Zone, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and immediately you're right there.
Before the film was finished, and even after, I would take the first 15 minutes around to film festivals and horror conventions, Fangoria conventions and the like, just to show that all the way up through the murder of Henry Thomas. And so once that happens, all bets are off. It's really fun.